Good afternoon. Warm welcome. It's Thursday, it's 3 o'clock, and it's Debating Africa. And as ever, we have commissioners from both continents. We have potential delay for one, I'll refer to that in a moment. But we have a range of commissioners and a range of you and those on our live stream joining us for this debate on migration, mobility, and the rule of law, governance in EU-Africa relations. It's a hot topic, merging two very controversial topics that have been the subject of so much discussion and impact both on the economy, politics, and society most widely, and relations, political relations across the continent, but also in the neighbourhood and further afield. Both subjects have been hugely debated and highly debated, caused controversy within the Union and in its relationships with others around the Union. I'm very pleased to warmly welcome the key partner in this debate on a Thursday at 3 o'clock is Jutta Urpilainen, who is obviously the lead commissioner from the Commission, who leads these debates with us Friends of Europe. Very warm welcome to you, Jutta. Just to say, before I invite you to say a few words, to say that Commissioner Minata is slightly delayed from the African Union. We're hoping that she's able to make it. She's delayed in a very urgent meeting with the president of one of the nations there. So it's a very good sound basis for her delay. We're hoping that she'll join us very shortly, though. Jutta, over to you first. We've been having a range of discussions up to now. This is our fifth installment, if you like, in the series of Debating Africa. Tell us, this particular one, this hot topic, why are we here today discussing this one before I move on to other commissioners? Warm welcome to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here again. And I think this is also a great habit to spend Thursday with you, debating on Africa and different perspective to our great partnership between EU and Africa. Especially, I'm delighted to have my dear colleagues, Commissioner Reynders, but also Commissioner Johansson, joining us today. And I think the topic, mobility and the rule of law and democracy, are the most acute and important topics to be discussed today. So far, in our debates on the 5 partnerships of the Africa strategy, we have spoken about the ways to make the most of our opportunities to provide more sustainable future for our youth. And one key factor to the success of a green transition or digital transformation or achieving human development is democracy. Good governance and rule of law, really, they help us to create fair economies, but also fair societies. They make people feel safe and heard and trusted. They also bring in investors, which we have been discussing in our previous debates. They open debate and encourage innovative thinking. So we want to provide sufficient opportunities for everyone. And this brings me to our second topic of today. People should only migrate because they want to do that, not because they have to do that. And this means looking at the root causes of migration. As emphasized in our Africa strategy in March, but also in the Migration Pact last week, we must ensure a balanced, coherent and comprehensive approach to migration and mobility. And this is what the recently presented EU Migration and Asylum Pact is. It is our commitment to play our part to strengthen global solidarity and shared responsibility. So I'm looking forward to having a fruitful discussion today on these 2 very, very important topics and also getting more reflections from our audience with this preparation towards our African Union, European Union summit. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jutta, for setting that context and the framework for this conversation. I'm going to swiftly move to Didier. Didier, a very warm welcome to you and joining us again on this hot topic, as we say, and described very well by Jutta. In terms of where we are, how can both continents strengthen their approaches and the mutuality in terms of good governance and the rule of law? Over to you. A very big question, I know, and you're smiling.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go.
No, like it was said by Jutta, it's already our commitment in the new EU African strategy, because we want to discuss on the governance, on the rule of law, and to exchange that, to have the same kind of framework, to have the same kind of goals. We want to be sure that it's possible to take some commitments. And we have discussed that in the discussion at the beginning of this year between the European Commission and the African Commission in Addis. It was fully just before the increasing of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have said it's very important to have the same kind of framework, I said. Mm-hmm. You know that at the EU level, we have published yesterday the first annual report on the rule of law. So to discuss about the justice system, the fight against corruption, the media pluralism, and the checks and balances in the constitutional order and in the different administrative order. And it was very important to show that we are doing the job at home. So it's not a discussion just from abroad. We are doing the job at home in the European Union, and we try to exchange in a real partnership with some partners about that. And with Africa, it's very important to explain that the rule of law, it's a precondition. If you want to go out of the poverty, of course, you need to have a good governance. The good governance at the level of the authorities, it's a very important element to reach the goal, sustainable development goals of the UN in many countries. It's a precondition, but it's also an important element for the economic development. If you don't have independent justice, to give an example, if you don't have a real fight against corruption, it's very difficult to have a good economic development. But more than that, through the rule of law, through an independent justice, through a fight against corruption, but through all those elements of sort of media pluralism, it's possible to have a real defense of the individual rights, the fundamental rights for all the citizens in Europe, like in Africa. And so the main goal is to try to organize a real partnership and to see how it's possible to exchange expertise. We are doing that with some help coming from Europe in the way to organize some reforms. It's also the best solution to give a real future to many young people in Africa, because they will be sure that it will be possible to take their own future in their hands because they have a good framework with a real rule of law in their countries. And it was said by Jutta, of course, it will be said maybe by Ylva also. The migration is that. First of all, there are many people going out of Africa for different reasons: climate change, poverty, bad governance. We need to fight against climate change. We need to organize a good process to fight against poverty. But of course, we need to do that with a good governance. And again, we have started the exchange with the African Union about that. And we are sure that in the partnership, it must be an important part to have a common framework and to try to take some commitments and to support, to conclude on this, the civil society. And we are very open to do that because the civil society needs to take part in the process, to have a real accountability, of course, of all the authorities, but also to have a real ownership for the entire society. And the civil society is very important to do that.
Thank you very much, Didier. I'd just like to pause with you because I still don't have confirmation that Minata can join us, but I know that I spoke to her at length this week in preparation for this discussion. And I suppose one of her concerns was that we know in Africa that the majority and the bulk of migration is within Africa. They bear the brunt of that within regions, South Africa and the Central Belt. But we also know that perceptions of corruption and the sense of the fact that the low percentage of people that have trust in Africa, but also sometimes in the EU, is so low that there's a sense that without tackling the corruption in Africa, you're not going to move in the way you do. But in the context of a relationship between the EU and Africa, one of the things that Minata said to me was that one of the bits of help they need is about community building, institution building, democratizing institutions. And what kind of help can the EU provide AU nations in relation to institution building and being able to provide the support for democratic polling, voting, etc., Just for you to kind of respond to that very specifically, because I know that was an issue that was raised by Commissioner Minata.
No, but I'm sure that we need to see that it's possible to organize a process with a real support coming from the European Union, because we are asked to all the member states at the EU level to have an action plan to fight against corruption. We asked to have a democratic process for the elections, and we are working with different institutions on that. But with a good cooperation between the EU, but other international organizations, I'm thinking about the Council of Europe, but also the World Bank, the IMF, it must be possible to make some efforts to install a real framework in African countries and to organize a process to have real instruments to fight against corruption, like you said, and to be very concrete. Of course, we need to have an action plan in all the different countries in Africa, but we need also to put into place some institutions. And of course, you need to have law enforcement authorities, but you need to, again, to have independent justice, independent prosecutors, to have a real accountability at the end of all the people in charge. And it's a long process. We are trying to do the job, I said, at home, so in the member states, in the European Union. So we have a certain level of expertise. And we are ready to discuss on it and to put that in the framework of our partnership with Africa.
Thank you for that. And I know that one of the issues will be, and I'm glad you said that, because I think there's a relationship between aid, financial support, as well as institution building, and the relationship between Africa and the EU, and about that concept of conditionality, which can be difficult and political, but there has to be some way in which you wrap around these international institutions with EU support to ensure and guarantee that people will do what they said they will do before they get the money. On that note, I'm going to kind of move on. I'll come back to you on that. You may want to reflect on that point. Is Commissioner Johansson. Ylva, very warm welcome to you. Very good to have you with us again.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to be with you again.
Thank you. We obviously, as you said, these are two hot topics, and I suppose the difficult question for me, from me to you, is about making that connection, because you know that people are outside, people around us, people on the ground, etc., find the two topics really difficult to digest, and they feel that they shouldn't be connected. But make the link for us in terms of the importance of these two areas. In the context of what you're doing in policy terms, which you obviously launched the migration pact, but make it kind of, I suppose, a direct response to why this is important to make the connection. Over to you.
Thank you. I think there is a very strong link and clear links between migration and mobility on one side and the good governance. It's clear that the lack of opportunities in jobs, lack of opportunities for education, security, stability, are root causes for migration. And there's a lot of challenges linked to good governance, to the rule of law, and to corruption that are harmful, undermining democracy, deepening inequalities in a society, eroding the citizens' trust in public institutions, with seriously negative consequences on the economic and social justice. All over the world, including in Europe and in Africa, such challenges have triggered groundbreaking economic, social, and political events. So, and I would like to make a very clear reference to what you just mentioned about the fight against corruption.
Yes.
It's a key component to promote good governance. Corruption is the abuse of power for private gain, and it affects and undermines the functioning of the state and of public authorities at all levels. And there's also undermining the trust. And it constitutes a threat to security, and it's an enabler for organized crime. It acts as a drag on economic growth by creating business uncertainty and imposing additional costs. So I think that this lack of trust and this gaining of more power for the organized criminal groups that comes with corruption is really a push factor and a root cause for migration. That's why the European Union and Africa need to work together to foster democracies based on the rule of law, well-functioning institutions, a real separation of powers, and guaranteed fundamental rights, free press, free elections. Good governance, along with proper state services, will provide for more economic opportunities, more security, less forced displacement, and less irregular migration. But we also, of course, need to work closer specifically on migration and mobility. So that partnership with Africa are key. So we need now a more intense dialogue with our African counterparts to define actions to deliver tangible results on this, because talking is one thing, but we also,
Exactly.
of course, it's necessary, but we also need to come to actions and results. Partnering with Africa to ensure a balanced, coherent, and comprehensive approach to migration and mobility is one of the main objectives of our African strategy and the new Pact on Migration and Asylum that we adopted last week, as rightly Jutta Urpilainen already said. We know that migration, with its importance for us all, this need a balanced, coherent, and comprehensive approach based on fairness and solidarity. Migration is nothing to be scared about.
Yeah.
Migration is something normal. Migration has always been there, migration will always be there, and we need migration. So it's our joint goal should be to able to manage migration more effectively together for mutual benefits. And we in the European Union will continue to pay particular attention to the vulnerable, including women, children, unaccompanied minors, and persons with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And we also remain committed to work together with our African partners, helping them to address refugee crisis and to support refugees in hosting countries. We need to defend the fundamental right to asylum, as well in the European Union as in Africa. Preventing irregular migration is a key priority, including stepping up the fight against the smuggling of migrants with our African partners. We have seen how these organized criminal networks that do that human smuggling, they are being very, very professional. The more like an industry, and
Absolutely.
they are used. This is really also a threat towards the legal economy in these countries. So it's important to fight this together and to work with capacity building for effective migration management in also our partner countries. It's very important. We are already in the process of deepening the cooperation through concrete operational actions as a follow-up to the ministerial level discussion in July on countering migrant smuggling with a number of African partners that we had. In our cooperation on return and readmission, and it's also very important, we should work, EU and Africa together, towards more effective, efficient and sustainable mechanisms, including through a better proportion of voluntary returns and reintegration. And it's essential that we implement this effectively. Effective returns of those who have no right to stay is needed so that because this is linked to the ability to step up legal pathways to the European Union.
Yeah.
And at the same time, legal pathways to the European Union is essential to fight human smugglers.
Exactly.
So these are linked very close to each other. So we need labor migration, including circular migration, not only for highly skilled workers, but also for medium and low skilled workers.
Yeah.
We need students and vocational training and to work together on that. And we need resettlement for those in need of international protection. But to be able, when I have to convince my member states to do more on labor migration and students and resettlement, I also need to help them with the readmission and returns, because these two are linked to each other in the European Union. And I know that these are also linked to the fighting against human smugglers and the root causes of migration in our partner countries. So it's important that we in the European Union should be better at welcoming all those that are eligible to stay in the European Union, both refugees and migrants. But that's also linked to be more effective on returns. I'm particularly pleased to continue our regular exchange with the African Union, and we need to continue and build on the significant achievement that we have reached for the voluntary returns and reintegration scheme in Libya that already have helped more than 50,000 migrants. And this is a way to work that we should step up and do more on. My last words is that the African Union has a paramount role in building our migration and mobility partnerships. Our partnership is strong and has resulted in many successes, but we need to do more and we need to take action. And we need to look forward to continue strong cooperation with the African Union on migration and mobility, working within and complementing the existing bilateral and regional frameworks. Considering our experience and the challenges ahead of us, including the coronavirus, this is really a challenge, both for humanitarian reason and economic impact. There is a momentum now to find an even stronger basis for our relations, and I'm happy to take lead on that. Thank you.
Ylva, thank you very much for that. And I think it's really simple and clear the way you've actually outlined what the two sets of issues are that actually make this issue an important one. But one of the things is there've always been taboos that we didn't want to discuss about migration and mobility. And I think you touched upon some of those, and we can't duck those, because one of the concerns we have in Europe is that the populist parties and those on the right wing exploit migration and mobility as the zeitgeist for their political momentum. And I think it's really important the way that you frame that there are checks and balances here. But the most important thing is there's the need for a new narrative on this, which actually says that Europe needs migration and mobility. If you think about the next 5 to 10 years, if not more, in terms of demographics, who pays the tax bill in the future, the populations that we've got in Europe, and the fact that, you've got less, 60% of the African population is under 25, 35. It's massive. So there's gains to be made in terms of how you do create those legal pathways and what you've structured. But it occurs to me one of the biggest issues is that how do you, and you've got the difficult job here, crack the nut of bringing quite a horizontal set of departments and structures to focus in for this to happen, which while still keeping member states happy about this. And I don't know that's a question, but I want you to reflect on that, because we do need a different narrative that's positive, but that doesn't pull the punches on the issue around human trafficking, the fact that it's an organized crime. Even in Brussels, we know that the organized crime happens from here and elsewhere. But how do we kind of, for you, the new narrative, and how do you make sure you can hunker down and create this horizontal, cross-departmental, cross-commission approach to this, which I know is hard? Sorry, over to you, Ylva.
Yes, I fully agree that we need to build a better narrative on migration, and trying to do my part of that. And then I think that what we need, migration could be dramatic for migrants or refugees. But I think that migration policies should not be dramatized. We have seen too many drama queens and drama kings into the debate, migration debate, and that's not good for their solutions.
Absolutely.
So we need sober and pragmatic. And of course, I'm a politician because I would like to be responsible and do changes. And then you need to just start working with that, and not only search for the perfect solution or the ideal solution, because there might not even be any. So we have to work with the realities. And the reality is that we have a lot of migrants coming to the European Union legally every year. We got more. Last year were 3 million residence permits in the European Union. And last year, more than 1 million people left the European Union. That means we're an extra 1.5 million people that are coming to our union every year. And we need them because we're an aging society. Last year, we had almost 700,000 of those becoming European citizens. But the dramatic discussion is about 140,000 that arrived irregularly.
Precisely.
And all of them risking their lives and paying into these criminal networks. So this is not rocket science. Of course, we can manage these irregular arrivals in a better way, and that we can try to have fewer irregular arrivals and then more legal pathways, both for migrants and for refugees to come to the European Union, because we also have to show global leadership when it comes to migration, in how we treat people and how that we defend the right to asylum, but also how we act in solidarity with countries and refugees all over the world, other countries, especially in Africa. So to answer to your question, I think is to de-dramatize the migration issue, and as you rightly said, a new narrative, but to really try to be pragmatic and sober and start working, even if the solution is not the perfect one, but there's a lot of things that we really can do to improve the situation, both for our member states, for Africa, and for migrants.
Ylva, thank you very much. I love your reference to the drama queens and drama kings in that context. It's a lovely way of referring to them. And I think one of the issues for me is, and I think we'll all be, and this is not for you to come back to, but the Commission has to get better at communicating on these simple numbers and these simple facts. And I wish there was some way of actually billboarding across the member states so that the fake news merchants, the drama kings and the drama queens, do not manipulate that data, which is so toxic and so emotional. And we need to find a way of getting the engine to work quicker on the communication side and the public relations side of why the EU is important, but actually doing the right thing. And I think the numbers you spelt out were really important, really important. And the fact that EU needs migration and mobility. So on that point, I'm very pleased to say we have Samate, the Commissioner from the African Union, joining us. Minata, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and sorry to be late because, as I explained, we are in Guinea to engage all stakeholders to be sure that we will have peaceful, credible election, free and fair. And we have meeting with the president that make me late for this meeting. I'm so sorry for that.
That's a very legitimate, important reason for being late. Don't worry. What you were doing is far more important. But I'm really pleased that you'll be able to make it, Minata, because it's important to get the African Union perspective on this very hot political set of issues. And I suppose, from your perspective, just for us, set out what you think is important that we need to be having in both the improvements on these issues within the AU, but more importantly, shaping the EU, the Africa-EU relationship on this topic. What do you want and what do you need and what would you like?
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We are late. All protocol duly observed. I salute all of you and say yes, that I'm pleased to be with you today for this virtual session to discuss about the future of AU-EU relationship, and particularly the theme is very important for us, and it is good to discuss about what can be our priorities. And I wish to recognize that the strong partnership between the African Union Commission and EU, which has grown over the years, and we appreciate that one. And also the invitation of today is a testimony of this very important relationship. And I remembered the visit of Her Excellency Ursula in Addis Ababa, and we discussed, and we have a very good MOU with the European Union. Concerning the team, our priorities are in the Agenda 2026 of African Union, and the Africa we want, but we cannot build that the Africa we want without also our friend and discussing about our priorities. Our priorities, amongst other, I will see the promotion of African solution to African problem, and especially the support from your organization. And we have a team of this year which is on silencing the guns, how we can create conductive condition for development in Africa. We have cooperation in many areas, but without silencing the gun, without tackling the root causes of these wars and conflict in Africa, we won't have peace in Africa. The necessity to work together to silence the guns. And priority will be preventive diplomacy, and that preventive diplomacy is on democratic values, practice, and universal principle, the respect of democracy, which goes with respect of human rights, justice, the rule of law, and now we are insisting on gender equality. We need peaceful, credible, and inclusive election, and also we are insisting now on the efficient public services delivery. Maybe we will come back on priorities, but I see the dialogue we have with human rights. It is a very important platform, but we need to have more support in the area of human right, like how do you call some areas about women. We need to pay more attention on that to help not to help to strengthen cooperation in these areas. And now we have I already speak about public service delivery, and we have democracy and election. We usually have support from European Union, and we insist on the necessity to strengthen governance institution, and also we need to support together institutional development effort of our electoral management. Now we are going to meet the team is meeting now the Electoral Commission of Guinea to be sure that the all necessary measure will be taken to be sure that we will have free, fair, democratic, and peaceful election. If there is something not going well, to use the legal institution to do that. But we cannot have this kind of work if we don't have strong institutions. Allow all our member states and citizens to be part. And we have a program on electoral assistance, and they are asking us to be part of observer because of coronavirus. Now it is a little bit difficult for that, and we are ready to work together to strengthen cooperation on all this matter, and the cooperation on electoral observation. We used to work with European Union when we are in the field, with your team, but not depending on you, but we are working together. I don't know if the commissioner is with me. We have this issue, COVID. I'm happy my predecessor, the commissioner before me, she is talking about migrant, and in Africa we have these migrant issues, and also last year we had the theme of year on refugees, IDPs, how we can tackle the root causes of a forced displacement in Africa, and sometimes it's difficult to do difference between migrant and refugees or IDPs. But we need cooperation and the support of European Union, and that give me occasion to congratulate some member state of European Union about this migrant issue, and we have to continue to talk together to be sure that we will take the right decision. And my appreciation for the trilateral document we have together on migrant coming from Libya and settle in Niger and in Rwanda. These are some key areas I want to say, but I will be ready to reply to question without ignoring the human rights issues, rule of law,
Thank you.
deepen synergy between our two organizations. Thank you, and sorry for being late.
Don't be silly. No, we're really pleased to have you, Minata. And thank you for that. Before you came, I did raise the issue with Commissioner Reynders, Didier, about the fact that you'd mentioned the importance of support in building institutions that can help. But also, before you came, Ylva and others referred to the fact that we need to tackle corruption. We need to create a different narrative between the continents about the fact that migration and mobility is good. It's not a negative, but we need to tackle the taboo subjects around it rather than duck them. But there's very much, and I take your point about African solutions to African problems, but we know there's an interdependency between the two continents, and it's about how that works, which is important. I want to move to our Zoom audience and our live streamers. sorry for keeping you kind of in abeyance. I'm sure you've been riveted, I hope, thought-provoked by the conversations and contributions from our commissioners. The usual rule of the game is to be on mute until you want to ask a question. Raise your virtual hand. If you don't know where that is, it's on the participants list, and you can raise it, and then I'll be able to call you in. Those of you who are on our live stream, use hashtag #DebatingAfricaEU to pose your question and your issue, and then we'll take you from there. So I have a couple already. So Louisa F. Warm welcome. Please introduce yourself and what your question is. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Welcome. Thank you all for this opportunity of this dialogue today and for giving me the floor. I'm Louisa. I'm policy officer at Caritas Europa based in Brussels, and we're also part of the European Development NGO network Concord Europe. So I'm here also representing them today.
Okay.
I would like to make a quick comment about three important aspects that were repeatedly mentioned at the beginning. Namely the aspect of coherence, balance, and sustainability when it comes to migration and mobility. In our view, these aspects are extremely important, and we appreciate the efforts put forward to ensure these aspects in the various frameworks that are being negotiated at EU level right now, such as the Post-Cotonou Agreement, the Migration Pact, and of course the EU-Africa strategy.
But Louisa, I feel there's a but coming. I feel there's a but coming. If you can focus on what it is, what you think is wrong,
Yes.
and what you'd like.
Yeah, for us, we don't see this balance or coherence, unfortunately, in these proposals of these frameworks,
Okay.
because we see an overwhelming focus on returns without focus on reintegration and sustainability of these returns. Without, on the other hand, we see the efforts on fighting regular migration, without, on the other hand, efforts to foster legal pathways for migration. So we miss this balance, and we would like to know how the EU-Africa strategy could be a tool to make more progress on this end. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And sorry to have interrupted, but I've got so many people lined
That's
up, and we
okay.
have a little bit of time. And you might, and I say to all of you, if I don't get a chance to get to you, use the chat function, post your comment, because all of those comments will be fed back into commissioners on both sides, so we can use them in debates as we move forward. So do not hesitate to use the chat function on the facility. I want to move, and also I would like you to respond to this question, is that what do you think about combining development aid with other parts of aid, so you create a different kind of pipeline of support from both Africa to EU, EU-Africa? But put that as a response and see what your comment is. I want to go to Ashwak.
Hello.
Warm welcome to you. Hello.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Ashwak Madani. I'm 23. I'm from Algeria. And
I need you to speak up a bit, if you can, please, or turn your volume up.
Is that good?
It's a little bit better. Go on, go for it.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions, if you allow me. One question for the EU part, one question for the African Union part. Just to put in the background, I've adjudicated yesterday a debate specifically about students who migrate out their countries, and we discussed whether or not their countries should encourage them to study home or go abroad. And so I addressed both parties on that. Do you think that students should be encouraged to study abroad, or should they be encouraged to study in their home countries? And what benefits do that go back to the home country and the host country? My second question would be for Ylva. When she said that there should be more legal migrants and less illegal migrants. And I wanted to ask about the strategy. How are we going to do that? Especially like there's an incident that happened in Algeria where a huge number of illegal migrants went to Spain. They took the sea, risking their lives, and just just for better futures, they hope. So how can we help this to be achieved, to make them like legal migrants? What is the strategy? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashwa. Those are very important questions, because they're both linked in a way, actually, about how do what are the issues there that actually what are the push and the pull factors in migration and mobility. I'm going to turn to Camino before I go back to the commissioners. Camino.
Hi.
Hello.
Afternoon. Hi. Thanks. This is Camino Mortera Martinez from Center for European Reform, a think tank based in London with offices in Brussels and Berlin. I have three very straightforward short questions for the three European commissioners. For Commissioner Urpilainen, do you feel that development aid is being a bit the victim of European Union's budget negotiations, and how will that affect the ability of the European Union to improve good governance in Africa? My second question would be to Commissioner Reynders, and do you fear that the European Union's soft power on the rule of law is being eroded by the behavior of some of our member states? So that also impedes our ability to teach others about the rule of law. And finally, for Commissioner Johansson, when you talk about legal migration from Africa and we talk about talent partnerships and the likes, I wonder whether the idea of also not only taking talents from Africa, but also like leaving some talent there in the form or in the shape of funding training institutions that could provide such training is something that the Commission has thought about, is on the table. Thank you.
Camino, when I hear people who like you who set out what these are the three questions, I get a sense you already have an answer to that, and that you have a view. Not that I want you to articulate that now, but I really welcome you using the chat function. Say from your think tank, when you ask those particular questions, what do you think should happen? And I think that will be helpful for people to know in terms of what the issues are. I'm going to take two more people before I go back to commissioners. We have Mbake. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. A warm welcome. Say who you are and briefly what your question is, or comment.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I have two questions, one for Minata and one for Commissioner Johnson. To begin with Aminata, we young people in Africa, we feel that we can't trust our politicians. How can we trust you to safeguard our interests in this EU and Africa relationship? Number two, the second question will go to Commissioner Johnson. I'm really excited about the opportunity, and I like the optimism. But how can we trust that this proposal you guys have in mind will really benefit the African? Because there are strong arguments that most of these European package are actually benefiting European, but they don't reflect African interests. So how can you show African young people that now this will be a mutual platform that will create opportunity for both continents? Thank you so much.
Mbake, thank you very much for not pulling any punches and going straight for it. But thank you, really warmly welcome that, because that's the importance of this debate. That we do get to the heart of the issue, and I'm quite frank about some of this. Minata, I'm going to turn to you to respond to that very, very specific question, because I referred to it before you came about the low levels of trust and the sense that people believe in Africa that the corruption's gone even higher in Africa than before. So, you're a public servant, as are the commissioners elsewhere. I asked them the same question in different ways, but what can you do?
Thank you very much. I would like to reply to Luisa about migration. Migration, sure. We have more migrants inside Africa. Indeed. But we don't have media to show that many millions are moving inside Africa. That's why we have our protocol on free movement and right of establishment, to be sure that we will help our citizens to stay in Africa, and if they are going to be to respect the rule, to not be illegal migrant. But when people are going, they won't tell you, politician or anybody, I'm going to move. But we are doing our best to be sure that we will have a project for young generation to have a good universities for them. And that bring me to the question of Ashwak about I don't know if we have to encourage our citizens to go. It's depend. Nowadays from Africa, we tend to further study, yes, in Africa, but sometimes it's due to the fact that some of those universities offer more opportunities abroad that made people going. This is totally normal and should be encouraged. If we don't have such university to go to be to study and to come back to build the Africa we want. We are investing in building learning institutions, schools, universities that are appropriate, and we are investing more in education and universities, but sometimes we don't have all discipline in Africa. And coming to Mbake, you can trust us. Yes, I fully understand, but I think you can trust, and together we will build the Africa we want for 2 or 3 reasons. The first reason, African Union is very engaged concerning young generation youth. That's why we have the year 2017 on the youth, how we can benefit for the dividend, demographic dividend to build Africa. That gives us opportunity to discuss with youth. And second reason, to tell you that you can trust us. President Faki appointed a special envoy, very dynamic young woman, youth special envoy. She's doing well, and we can share with you her contact. You will see which she is doing fantastic job. And also we have inclusive program. As a political affairs department, I'm working a lot. We have every year program with young to engage them depending on the theme. Now we are discussing how young people can bring solution on the table for silencing the guns, and on constitutionalism with rule of law, and especially with COVID now. And we have also African Union leader take decision. And I don't remember the year we will have more youth in the African Union Commission, include women, and we are encouraging discussion with our member states. We cannot do without a young generation. I think it is a new, we don't have a choice. We have your senior, we don't have choice to work with you, and I'm quite sure you are competent. You can be confident to us. You can work with us to see together how we can build the Africa we want, counting on young people and women in Africa. We cannot do without them. Thank you.
No, Minata, thank you very much. And I suppose what we're hearing, and we've heard this on both sides of the continent actually, is that this is great. What you're saying is absolutely fine, but you know this well enough as a politician that actions speak louder than words. People have to feel. People have to feel that things are happening around them, rather than from what they see in different nation states, where actually they see corrupt leaders who go unpunished or do not get removed from power. That happens in the EU too. Don't forget, it's not just an African problem. But I think for every politician, that sense of public service to instill a level of trust is key. And I say to all the people who've asked a question, if you feel your question hasn't been adequately answered, use the chat function. Then post it, because that's part of this process of accountability and engagement. So I'm going to go to our commissioners very briefly. Jutta, I'll come back to you at the end, if I may, rather than now, because you'll wrap up for us anyway in terms of some of the issues that have been raised for you. But I want to go to Didier. Didier, if you can respond to some of the issues that have been raised by our colleagues on Zoom. Over to you.
But first of all, it was the question of Camino, because she's right that, of course, we need to do the job at home. I've said that at the beginning of the discussion.
Exactly.
If we want to have a certain level of credibility when we are speaking about rule of law and other kind of issues out of the European Union, not only in the neighboring countries, like in the candidate countries or in the Eastern Partnership, but also in our partnership with Africa. And it's the reason why we have published yesterday the first annual report on the rule of law. It's the reason why we are going to the Court of Justice at the EU level against some legislations in the EU and in some member states due to a lack of rule of law in different member states. So it's true that, first of all, there's a real job to do in the European Union before to be credible outside. But it's the reason why also we are thinking about the common framework with the African Commission to put together our expertise about the way to assess the situation, independence of the justice system, in the fight against corruption, to give two examples, and then to see how it's possible to do to improve the situation. Of course, with the same mechanism, maybe also, like you said before, in capacity building. And I've said also that it's very important to do that not alone, but maybe to try to have a common approach with other international organizations like the World Bank and the IMF. But it's very important, it's true, that we are showing that it's possible to react inside the European Union about some breaches to the rule of law. And to conclude, is the reason why, where you were speaking about the conditionality,
Yes.
we try to install at the EU level a real conditionality between the funding of some policies inside the EU to the member states and the rule of law. We need to show that there's also a conditionality at the EU level about the rule of law if we want to organize a certain level of conditionality in the financing of different policies in development aid.
Thank you very much. And again, for those of you who've asked questions, if you feel that you want more, post it on the chat. Ylva, if I may turn to you now, and range of issues. I think you've captured them. Over to you to respond to, the legal routes and the fact that, we had that conversation from one of the colleagues about Algeria and students, etc. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for very good questions and engagement. First, to back on this, I think, of course, we have to build our partnership on real mutual benefits, and that's why we need to build partnership not for the short term, but also for the long term, together with our African partners. But I'm very happy to welcome young Africans to come to for talents or to study or to work in the European Union. But of course, the most important thing is to focus on young people's future in Africa. So that's why it's so important what I mentioned also with the good governance, that is really linked to trust and faith in the future, but also, of course, for economic development and other opportunities. And Camille, you rightly said that we should not take talents. That would not be a good a mutual beneficial partnership. What we need to do.
Oh, you've muted, Ylva. You've just muted. Sorry. There you go.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
I think it's important that we should not take talents. Of course, that's not a good way to build mutual benefits. So that's why I also mentioned circular migration. I think this is an important part, but also students and vocational training, and also investments in educational reform and helping to build also good educational institutions in our partner countries. I think that's an important part. Then there were for Ashunak and Luisa questions about more on the European policy on migration. And I would like to turn from irregular to regular. And that's why we need to focus on the root causes of migration, to help our partner countries to manage migration in a good and orderly and fair way, but also to fight the criminal networks that are now being quite strong, and they are also risking people's lives. And this is really something that we need to fight together. And to Luisa, the new pact on migration and asylum do not focus only on returns, but we see that effective returns is linked to different parts. For one example is to really be able to defend the right to asylum. And in my view, the right to asylum is threatened also in the European Union. So that's really important for me, to defend the right to asylum. And that, of course, a person that got asylum should have protection. But those who got a negative decision, there must be some other consequences. And this, of course, they need to leave the European Union and return. But even if they have to return, they are human beings. They have rights, they have dignity, and they have to be treated according to these. But I just want to mention, it's not that we are lacking other issues. So we are also coming up with a strategy for voluntary returns and reintegration. I'm going to present that in the beginning of the next year. We are coming with a new package on legal pathways, including circular migration. And we also have in our package a proposal on community-sponsored resettlement on top of the resettlement scheme that member states are already doing.
Thank you, Ylva. I think it's really heartening that we have a politician able to speak without ducking the issues, but in a positive frame of mind in terms of this debate, because that's what we need more of. Because one of the issues here is that when we have tomorrow or the day after, I hope not so, another boat that capsizes, or another set of, invariably black, Asian, brown faces that are struggling across the waters to get into Europe, creates an image that unnecessarily topples a good narrative. And I think there's an urgency of the legal routes and being able to deal with the banditry that's taking place, because those images are powerful and our media are full of them, which actually, unfortunately, underscores and undermines the narrative that you're presenting. So there's a priority here of how we deal with that. I've got 3 more contributors I want to bring in. Zaruk?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Honorable commissioners, so happy and proud to be here with you, and thank you for inviting the United Cities and Local Government of Africa.
Welcome.
And also I would like to congratulate you because you built together this team of these events, migration, mobility, and good governance. And I really appreciate that they are really, really linked to each other. I think we are dealing with the 2 continents linked to each other for so many positive reasons: historical, geographical, cultural, economical, and political. So we need also to take stock of this current context, the SDGs, the African Union vision, the Cotonou Agreement discussion, the new framework of programming of European Union, the new leadership in European Union, etc. So how we can rethink and make sure to set these relationships on friendship, mutual interests, solidarity, and also the sustainable development. I think, first of all, we need to give hope. If you ask any young people in Africa if he wants to leave Africa, he will say yes, because there is no hope. We need to work to rebuild this hope, in particular for vulnerable and for the youth. We need to rebuild trust in public institutions, building strong public institutions at all levels of governance, not only at national, central, but including subnational and local and regional. And we have worked a few years ago in UN. We have some documents on how we can build this trust. It depends on the economic, the political, and also the social dimensions. We need effectiveness. I think if we take time to see all the legal framework we have, both in Europe and in Africa, we have all what we need. But what about implementation? What about monitoring? What about evaluation? I take time to read recently the Convention of African Union on Corruption. We have all what we want, but what is about the implementation? What is about the responsibility?
So okay. So Zaruk, I'm going to ask you to conclude.
Finally, I will finish.
You're
the
stubborn.
Other pillar,
yes.
The very important pillar is empowering people.
Okay.
To give them wings, to give them choice, to give them hope.
And I love what you're saying. Zaruk, I think it's lovely what you're saying. And as you say, just like we've got all the processes and the policies, you need implementation. All that you're saying, no one would argue with. Hope is one of the most important things, but what are the components of hope that you can put into place at a local level? You are an academy, you've got the cities, and I want you to answer this question right now, but use the chat function. Is that what do you want? What does implementation mean? Because people say that all the time, and you can feel the frustration of young people both in the EU and Africa that, come on, enough already, get a grip, let's see some action. But what does that look like? And what we know is politics gets in the way, or corruption. And those are the 2 dynamics that we need to deal with. I have 2 further speakers. Ilham?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, my name is
Welcome.
Ilham. I am a project manager at the Foundation Heinrich Böll, and we're based in, we have a lot of offices, but I'm based in Morocco. So the question was about how do you think the European Union can engage in a more transparency about the funds that are given to Africa, to the African states in general. This in order to help the management of migration and to assure a good governance.
Okay. That's a good question. And the last one I'm going to be taking before we conclude our set of issues. I will take perhaps, just because I think someone's been waiting, Meryl, before I come back to all the commissioners to wrap up. Meryl?
Hello, everyone. My
Hello.
name is Meryl from Nairobi, Kenya. I am a youth champion with One Africa. And my question is really on the engagement of grassroots activists when it comes to migration. So one of the biggest issues we have is the fact that many young people want to leave the country, but their rights are not protected when they go abroad as students. What do you think the EU can do to enhance the quality of treatment of young Africans who are working abroad, not necessarily studying, when it comes to human rights violations? Thank you.
What kind of things, Meryl, what kind of things are happening that and also what would you like to see happen? Very briefly, go on.
All right, thank you for that. Well, firstly, we see a lot of young creatives leaving the continent to go and start businesses or perhaps explore opportunities that can expand the scope of their reach when it comes to the market. And most of them either end up in prison or are victims of racist incidences. At which point it even affects them because they become assaulted or beaten up. We even had one student actually died last week. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, really the question is, how then can we increase the rate at which young Africans are migrating but becoming legal migrants and having their human rights still protected when they leave the continent?
And is part of it, and sorry because you've brought up such an important issue, as others have, the thing about, and Didier referred to this, there's something about building capacity amongst One Africa, as you said, the young people, but is there a role for getting access to finance, transparent finance, that helps you as young people be able to be the, I suppose, the wiring up of support, creating this transparency, and being able to, improve knowledge of what's going on? Have I answered your question? I'm sorry if I have. Go on.
Yes, definitely. In some way, you have answered it. However, we tend not to see those kinds of resources trickling down to where the mobilization is actually occurring.
Thank you.
And really the question is, how then do we effectively make sure that young people who are building this capacity are still able to access those resources?
Thank you. I'm going to end on that question. So, commissioners, get ready, if I can say that. I have less than 5 minutes. So if I could ask, and it's a punishing concluding remarks in response to what you've heard. I'm going to go to Didier first yourself to respond to some of the issues you've heard today, and any final remarks.
But very briefly, it's maybe very important to explain again that we try to build a real partnership between the European Union and Africa, and maybe between the European Commission and the African Commission, because it's very important to explain that we are trying to have a link between the rule of law and the governance in Europe and the European funding of different policies, that we try to be very transparent in the way to use the European money inside the European Union, that we are asking for all the member states to make progress in the independence of the justice system or in the fight against corruption, so that we are doing the job at home. Before to discuss and to show to African colleagues that it's possible to work together on the same framework and maybe with the same method to assess the situation, but more than that, to try to improve the situation. And it's true with young people, it's maybe possible with some funding, again, to take part in the capacity building. What are the steps to have real effect on the ground? But again, it's not just to give lessons out of the European Union. It's to give our expertise to help to improve the situation in many countries in Africa, because we have a lot of things to do at the EU level. And when we speak about transparency in the funding or conditionality, we are discussing now. I will go just now to the European Parliament to discuss about the conditionality of the funding of different policies at the EU level and the rule of law. And so when we are saying that to the African countries, it's just saying that we need to do the same. and to have a real ownership in Africa about that, like we have an ownership in the European Union. And of course, we are ready to organize more transparency about the funding of all those mechanisms to help African countries to do the same and to improve the governance.
Absolutely. And thank you for being frank about the fact that we need to hold the mirror up to ourselves whilst we engage with others. And I think that's a very important message. And knowing how political and complicated that debate has been, good luck this afternoon when you go into that conversation about conditionality. I want to move to Ylva. Ylva, if I may, to respond to some of the issues you've heard and your final remarks.
Yes, I would like to respond to Muriel. I think what you raised, Muriel, is really the most important issue. We have racism in European Union, and this is a poison that destroys society, but it's also a deadly poison, as you also said. So this is really something that we need to fight, and we just recently presented the first anti-racism action plan from the Commission. I think it's very timely that we do it. There's a lot of more that we have to do. For me, for example, I'm also responsible for police, law enforcement.
Indeed.
And for the police, I'm going to talk to all the national police chiefs later this fall about how we also into the police force can fostering the anti-racism that is necessary. But we need it all over in society. But as I said in my introduction, those that are legally in European, they should be welcome and they should feel they are welcome, because we need you to come here and we need you as partners, and we need you to be welcome and be part of society. And it's really important, migrants in European Union are not them, they are part of us.
Yep.
And racism is that poison. So I think you really mentioned one of the most important homework that we need to do in the European Union, because we can't be proud unless we have fight all this racism that poisoning our society.
Ylva, you cannot underestimate how important it is you're saying what you're saying in the way that you're saying it, and also the importance of continuing to say that, because I think that's the different narrative you need to have, we need to have in Europe. But also, I'm glad that you make reference to speaking to police chiefs, because you can see both here in Brussels and elsewhere, since the confinement, but also the hashtag Black Lives Matters issues, we've seen real conflagrations between Moroccan youth, in particular here in Brussels, and police, but also elsewhere, from different minorities who feel a sense of, I suppose, ventilation and frustration that's coming out. And I wish you well in those conversations. But that narrative that you're pronouncing on is key. And thank you for that. I want to go to Minata. Very briefly again, thank you very much for joining us, and your response to what you've heard in some final remarks.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to come back on the issue of corruption. We are working on it. We have the year 2018 to work on that one. We have our strategy. We have also a PRM, African Peer Mechanism Review. And we have our organ in charge of fighting corruption. And we need cooperation with our partners, especially about illicit financial flow that will help us if we have our money. And also to take engagement I want to come back also about migration issue. We need to work on irregular migrant, not regular one. All African are not irregular migrant. I appreciate what Yilma said, but we need to focus on irregular one. Okay. And also the issue of COVID. We didn't talk a lot about the COVID situation, the impact of COVID on youth and women. We need also to work about that one. But I have a chance to have many EU commissioners to work also about the issue of debt relief and strengthen the health system on our continent. We are going to have a meeting together to strategize together. We need to focus on some areas about peace, security, and governance, and we are ready to work on that one especially, and to ensure young generation. We have our CFTA and also free movement, and we are working to be sure that we will keep our citizen, young generation in Africa. I can reaffirm our commitment to deepen our relationship with the European Union. And we believe firmly that we should work together as partners to contribute to address all challenges we have about democracy, governance in general.
Thank you very much. And let's hope you had the ear, but that point about debt relief, there's our checks and balances there that everyone needs to be thinking about in terms of transparency and what that can lead to in terms of reduction of corruption, etc. Jutta, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but for you to just very, very briefly conclude so that I can wrap up and move us on.
Thank you. I think I find this conversation very valuable, and I think the key word in a way was trust. That can we trust in our leaders? Yeah. Can we trust us politicians? Yeah. Do we have that feeling that we are part of something? We are part of society. Do we have that feeling that we are visible? That our voice is really heard? I think those are very, very important questions also from the democracy perspective and also from the good governance perspective. There was a question whether we are able to support good governance through the developing cooperation in Africa. We definitely do that, and I can tell you that good governance and democracy is also one of the priorities in our new Africa strategy. And definitely when we are going to programming for the next 7 years through our developing cooperation programs, we will of course highlight the role of the good governance and democracy and the rule of law also in those projects. And especially I see, it was also mentioned here, but also in our previous discussions, that the role of the young people is crucial. And I'm looking for now, as you know, the different kind of tools that how are we able to strengthen the youth participation, not only, in the national level, but also in the local and regional level, so that, they really could be engaged and also to be heard.
Okay.
And I think it's necessary because you were referring to the fact that 60% of the citizens in Africa are under 30 years old. So I personally see that they need to be heard and they need to be part of the decision making as well. Then only a few words about mobility. I think Ylva explained very well our comprehensive approach relating to that, and I think as you said yourself as well. I think the only way to succeed is to have this kind of a horizontal approach. And I think that's also something new, what we are now trying to do within the Commission, European Commission, but I think also with the African partners, that we have a different policy aspects on the table when we are talking about migration. And I really hope that we are able to succeed on that. There was also a question relating to students and whether we recommend to study abroad. I'm very happy to inform you that actually we are increasing funding for Erasmus+, which is a great opportunity for African students to study in Europe also. So I really hope that the African students are going to use that. But in a nutshell, I think very valuable discussion. Of course, we are going to collect all the remarks and questions from the chat box, and looking forward to continue our debates in the future. Thank you.
Jutta, thank you so much. And thank all commissioners, but thank you, our audience, both on live stream and Zoom. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you. Continue to chat, use the chat function, and thank all of you for being involved in this very important conversation. And we're going to take a bit of a break on the Africa debating series. So Jutta and I won't be here next Thursday at 3. or the week after, but we'll be back hopefully end of October or early November to talk about some other key big issues. So hope you don't miss us too much, but we'll be back. And thank you all again. Keep tuned in. I have to go very quickly, so any of you who are interested in listening to Ilhan Omar, one of the first American Somali women to get into Congress, I'm interviewing her in 9 minutes. So stay tuned if you want to engage in that conversation. Thank you all very much and see you again. Take care. Mind your distance and be safe. Bye-bye.